So we're going to do a video that breaks down our two games against Missouri Rush. The one that happened on January 11th and the one that happened on January 25th. Okay, so we're going to redefine, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be comparing direct play to possession style. So direct play is when we're making runs that are towards the opponent's goal and we're kicking the ball or dribbling the ball in a very direct manner that's just going straight at the other opponent's goal. Possession means that we can pass the ball forward or we can dribble forward, and we can make runs forward, but we're moving the ball around depending on what the other team is doing. So we're trying to be very intentional of keeping the ball away, and trying to find favorable outcomes or favorable situations for us to attack. We're going to be looking at turnovers, shots by us, when we scored, when they scored, and corner kicks. I forgot to include a couple of the outcomes in this. But we will be looking at those things. All right, so let's go ahead. And I'm going to move myself, attempt to move myself. Let's go ahead and look at how we did in the first game to the second game. As I watched the video before I took stats, I could see a difference in the way we played. And the data says that our possession increased by 7% and our direct play decreased by 7%. So you can see that we were a lot more intentional in this second game, and we controlled that second game better than we did in the first game. Now, again, you might say over here, in our first game, we won 6-2, but in our second game, we won 5-2. Shouldn't we play more direct because we won by more? I think that's a very short-sighted way of thinking. As we dive into these outcomes, when we have more shots, we're going to score more goals. But you could have a game where you only shoot 10 times and score 5 goals, and you could shoot 30 times and score 2 goals. Over time, I want games where I'm shooting more, and I'm going to have more favorable outcomes than the ones that I'm shooting less. Because you can't really compare them side by side and say, well, this one gave us this outcome, this one gave us this one. Over time, you're going to see more favorable outcomes. So the data, we have to really dive into what the data says. So when we put the two games together, you can see that we are possessing or we're playing indirect more, almost 59% of the time, and we're playing direct about 41% of the time. So we're slowly starting to increase that. And again, I think our goal should be about possession 75% of the time is really what we want to be going, and then playing direct 25% of the time. When we compare the first time we played, we saw that when we played direct in our first game, 75% of the time we turned over, and we didn't have a lot of favorable outcomes like getting shots, scoring. But when we came over here and we compared it to when we were playing possession, our turnovers dramatically dropped by 30%. Our shots increased by 30%. And they did not score when we possessed, but they did score when we played direct. So we saw that there was a big change in what would happen when we possessed. So let's compare how we played directly in our first game compared to how we played directly in the second game. It does not surprise me. First game, turnover 75%. Second game, turnover 75%. So when we're playing direct, we're still turning the ball over about the same amount of times. We got shots almost 6% of the time in the first game. In this game, we got shots about 14% of the time. So shots did increase. Corner kicks decreased a little bit. We scored, we scored twice in both games playing direct. So, I mean, that does influence a little bit. But again, it's very similar. You can see turnover. I mean, it's really filled out very similar in that. So let's take a look at how we compared in possessions. Possession play in the first game to the second game. We turned the ball over 44% of the time in the first game. And when we play possession, we turned the ball over 41% of the time. So very, very similar. So we definitely had a big drop in how we turned the ball over. We got a shot 35% of the time in the first game when we possessed. This time we went up to 43%. So shots are increasing. almost half the time when we possess, it results in us getting a shot. We scored in this game 3 times. 3 times when we were possessing. And in the first game, we scored 4 times when we were possessing. That's pretty similar. Notice how our corner kicks went up. We got a corner kick only 2% of the time in the first game. It went up to 9.4%. So very positive outcomes when we're possessing. So again, we can see that when we're playing direct, we're giving the ball up a lot of the time. When we're trying to possess, about more than 50% of the time, something good is happening. So let's go ahead and look at both games together, comparing direct and possession. Again, you can see turnovers are happening most of the time, 3/4 of the time, 75% of the time when we play direct. And you can see that it drops by almost 30%, more than 30% when we try to possess. Look at how our shots increase. We're only getting shots 9% of the time. This time, we're almost getting shots 40% of the time. It's right there. It's a 30% increase in shots. So, for me, I see the benefit in being very intentional. So, let's break down our possession in the first game to the second game. Still very similar. We're doing a lot of 1, 2, 3 touch passes. And then about 10% of the time, we're extending more passes. Here, we had about 10% of the time we're making more than 1, 2, or 3 passes. So that's very, very similar in what we did. As you can see, about 12% of the time we're connecting more than that. But most of the time it's a 1, 2, or 3 touch pass, and then we're finding that positive outcome. So what I wanted to dive into this to more is that let's go ahead and take a look at how we've maybe made some adjustments. In the first game, we came out very direct. And we had the ball on our offensive half 53% of the time. That first 5 minutes of the game, 53% of the time. We had it in our defensive half 46% of the time. Now, I know in that first game, in that first 5 minutes, we were up 2-0. But Lucas and Jackson scored very difficult goals. They didn't have a really good angle. They shot front post, and they scored. They were excellent goals, but they were also difficult shots. In this first game, Henry had to make 3 or 4 saves right at the beginning. One of them was a fingertip off the crossbar. So in this first game, when we really came out very, very much in that direct play, shots were somewhat equal. We just had more favorable outcomes than they did in scoring. But over time, if we continue playing this back and forth, it's going to be difficult for us to score sometimes. And eventually they're going to start scoring on us. In the second game, when we came out, I saw that we were much more intentional in possession. And what happened is 65% of the time, we kept it in our offensive third. That's a 12% increase. And it was only in our defensive half 35% of the time. That is an 11 or 12% decrease. So we're, again, finding the ball where we want. Now, I think this is a more telling stat right here. In the first 5 minutes, they had the ball 61% of the time in that first game. That first 5 minutes of the first game, they had the ball at their feet. It was either a throw-in, something that they did. Now, again, I know that there was 2 goals, and we're stopped, and the ball's just sitting at the half line. So I counted one of those instances as us having possession, and one of those instances as them having possession to try to equal that out. But we only had the ball 38% of the time in that first 5 minutes of that first game. Now, I know that we said that over here, we had the ball 35% of the time in our defensive half. But if you watch that video, we were possessing that ball a lot. But we were passing it and taking our time and moving the ball around. So you can see that we possessed almost 75% of the time in that second game. And they only had the ball 26% of the time. We had a lot of corner kicks. We had some good shots. I don't even know if Liam got one shot against him. Okay, maybe it was one. But again, if we look over here, I know that this second game we was 0-0 5 minutes in. The first game we're up 2-0. They had really tough shots against Henry, and Henry did a really good job with that. But we had some really difficult goals that we scored on some amazing shots. Here, we really controlled the game. We came out very intentional. Liam never really got challenged in that first 5 minutes. And we had great opportunities. So again, we shouldn't look at we were up 2-0, we were tied 0-0. Over time, that's not always going to be the case. So my takeaways. Definitely had more control in that game, and we want to continue building that control. I want you to go back and watch the video. Notice how much energy we had to spend by possessing the ball. The ball did the work for us. Look how much energy they had to drain to chase us. I also wanted you to consider that when we're possessing the ball, when we turn it over, we are organized defensively. Because we're spread out and we have our shape, when we turn the ball over, we're in a good defensive shape. When we play direct, we push a lot of numbers forward. And if we lose the ball, there's going to usually be a big gap between our offense and defense. So I think possession also leads to us playing better defense. So I'll really encourage you to take an opportunity and to watch a few moments out there from our last game, and especially that first 5-10 minutes. You can tell that you're really trying to play possession and you're doing some good things, and we definitely want to keep that mindset and keep building on this. But overall, great job last Saturday. Very proud of you guys.